Good morning. Welcome back to the weird and wonderful chats with strange bones. So, we've been discussing vampires, and why would we be doing that? Well, it seems to be one of the big topics at the moment with all the changes in the Catholic Church and a new pope being put in and all the rest of it, and people wondering about uh, what exactly it might be that they are or are not hiding. Um, that's a very interesting question. There's a good morning to Mr. Gerard Scarpi, who's just joined in for our chat. Hey, Scarpi, are you having a fine time? Why don't you join in? Join. There we go. Fantastic. Hey, good morning, buddy.
Hey, bud, good and you?
Lekker. So, how are you doing? Are you cold down that side?
Cape Town is there's a bit of sunshine at the moment, but yeah, it's been very, very chilly last night and also the previous day. But at least we got some sunshine, and I am actually on the way to the dentist at 12 o'clock. So I've got something nice to look forward to.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's nothing better than freezing cold and sore teeth.
Any case, so I just joined now. What is the discussion point this
Okay,
morning?
so funny you should mention teeth because we've started up our foray into the whole concept of vampires. Now,
Oh, that's a Dracula and his canonis.
well, is it? There's an interesting question because just welcome to Herman and Chilo and Mandy that just joined us. But yeah, you see, modern views of vampires are very much the result of the fictional novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Now, Bram, of course, got his
Okay.
ideas from a real life person by the name of Vlad Tepes from Romania. So, most of modern Western views of vampires come entirely from the Romanian, but they were never the first, number one. And number two, they're actually pretty modern compared to some of the original stories about vampires around the world. We have legends dating back to the Persians and Babylonians, so many thousands of years before the 14th century. So, while of course the Romanian stuff is really quite interesting, it's certainly not the original. And so, we're going to have a quick look at some of the different cultures that have vampires. And one of the things which has come out of my research on this, which I think you might find interesting, is the fact that because there are so many varieties out there, um, surely they should all be different. But in fact, they're not. Despite them being in completely different parts of the world and in completely different cultures, in fact, there's a hell of a lot in common with the different stories, which makes me wonder how that could possibly be. So that's what we're talking today. Hey there to Yellowbox and Samandla and users, all those numbers, many numbers. But yes, so the topic is where do vampires come from and what are they? That's what we're discussing at the moment. Now, for the most part, as we discovered in our last live, it was absolutely agreed that they are some kind of creature between living and dead. But in fact, as we go a bit deeper, we realize that's not entirely the case. Um, over the world, you get living vampires, you get dead vampires, and you get half vampires. So there's quite a varied selection going as to who and what. So please tell me what you think. Um, pop in a comment or two. I see our live with Skype somehow stopped, sad to say. I think he must be in an area where the signal's not great. Poor man's on his way to suffer at the dentist. But yeah, so what can we actually say about vampires? Well, in our last little go in, we discovered that there are certain commonalities which does matter. First of all, and most importantly, they drink blood. That is the key thing that makes a vampire a vampire. And secondly, they are in some way evil. There are, until the modern age, with our Twilights and what have you, there are no stories of good vampires, none whatsoever. They are the bad guys. So, the first place we're going to have a quick look at, and I wish we could go far deeper in each area, and please, if there's some you want us to go further into, do let me know. But we're going to do a quick foray into each. Hey, Joey, how you doing? So, ancient India. Yep. In ancient India, which is very, very well before any of the stories that we have affecting our modern views of vampires, they had Vitalas, ghoul-like beings that inhabit corpses. So now here's an interesting one because the spirit itself inhabits somebody else's corpse. They are not the corpse themselves, and the corpse is very much dead. Um, they are mostly from very specific stories in the Indian collection of stories and things. This one, forgive me if I ruin the pronunciation, but I really don't speak a lot of the Indian languages. So, Betal Panchabingashati, a prominent story in the Kasarsarit Sagara and the story of King Vikramaditya, who tried to catch one. So the Betal is an undead creature, so that's in line with our modern day vampires, with bat like features, again, very much in line. For some reason, bats and vampires very much connected, even though the only place with blood drinking bats is the Amazon, with the vampire bats there. And they got their name from vampires, so go figure. Um, the creature is found in cemeteries and cremation grounds, and they are the returned spirits of evildoers or those who have died insane. Now, this ties in with the original understanding of what vampires are, in that they are evil in some way. You've got to have done something bad to become a vampire. So, absolutely fits in there. And of course, keep in mind, we're talking thousands of years ago that these stories were written. India has some very ancient legends, so that's a good one to have a look at. Now, we're going to jump from India to the Jewish tradition where you find the Aluka, which quite literally means a leech, which again suits very much. Also known as Motet's dam or bloodsucker, right again, very much in with our traditional type vampire. In the Sefer Hasidim, the creature is described, or at least understood, as being a living human being, but can shape change into a wolf. It can fly, somehow using its long hair. And if it doesn't drink blood for some reason, it will then eventually die. Once dead, it can be prevented from becoming a demon by being buried with its mouth stuffed with earth. Now, this again links to many modern views of these things, that somehow you have to stop the mouth. There have been plenty of graves dug up of suspected vampires. Hey, Aster 98. And they have a rock or something stuffed in its mouth, so right on there. So we can say that that's certainly um, consistent, at least. We find that later on, when the Jewish people were in the Central European diaspora, and obviously would have been influenced by local traditions, um, the idea of Lilith comes back, which, as we know, was supposedly one of the original vampires. Um, could transform herself into an animal, usually a cat, which is unusual with vampires, actually. One tends to find it be bats and wolves and such, at least in the modern views. Can charm her victims, absolutely. Um, no doubt at all that the charming is a big deal about being a vampire, but the difference is that rather than drain their victims, they strangle them. In the Kabbalah, she retains many attributes found in the modern view of vampires, um, and a 17th to 18th century document uh, which does speak of amulets to hold away whatever these things are, the Lazakar or the Lanekava, um, with comments mentioning on the amulets Adam, Eve, and Lilith, and so on, and some of the angels, such as San Sinoi and Shamariel, and so on. So, absolutely invoking celestial protection against. Um, so, Lilith was seen to take the newborns and drink the blood and eat the flesh. And according to this text, she will lose power if somebody uses her secret names. Names are a very big thing in many traditions, especially the Jewish. So we know that that's supposed to hold a lot of influence against these creatures. So, absolutely, yes, we're going to take that as consistent with the modern view. However, then things do move on a bit. Obviously, with cultural influences from other people, where you have the daughter of the demon king Asmodee takes the breath of um, her victims. And of course, as we know, breath is very, very important in the Jewish religion, the Ruach. So that certainly references life and health and all the rest of it. And there is even a rare story in the Sefer Hasidim 1465, which speaks of an old vampire named Astria who uses her hair to drain blood from her victim. Hair, again, often comes up in many cultures as a point of strength. Indri Pruitt, welcome, welcome. So, absolutely. Now, this, of course, moves on from the Jewish versions into medieval and modern European, where the influences would have swung back and forth. And here's where staking starts to come in, I think, from what I've read here in the different stories, because originally staking was to stop the evil witch. Vampires are certainly connected to the evil witches, so vampires as well now get looked at as being requiring staking to stop them. Now, 12th century English historians such as Walter Map and William of Newburgh records account of revenants, um, which would include vampires, revenants being undead creatures of some kind. Chilo Rejoice, hello, welcome to our channel. Big waves to you all. Okay, so looking at the English legends of vampiric beings, very folklory from southeastern Europe, Transylvania, of course, where the basis of our modern vampire legends come, but also Germany and England. And we can say that in around the 18th century, there was a frenzy of vampire sightings in southeastern Europe, uh, along with frequent stakings and grave diggings taking place to identify and kill the potential revenants. And even the government got involved and did some of the hunting and staking as well. So it definitely got to be a bit wild. This time was called the Age of Enlightenment, but to be true, that was only the case in certain things. It seemed while many folkloric legends and superstitions were quelled, those about vampires increased and got to a point that we can call mass hysteria. The panic began, of course, in 1721 in a really serious way with the alleged, was it alleged? We don't know. Alleged vampire attacks in East Prussia in the Habsburg monarchy and spread from there to other localities. Two famous cases. First, the first to be officially recorded involved a fellow by the name of Peter Blagojevich and Arnold Powell, both from Serbia. Um, Blagojevich was reported to have died at the age of 62, but allegedly returned after his death, asking for his son for asking his son for food. His son, for whatever reason, possibly because his dead father locked up, refused him and was found dead the following day. He then returned and attacked some neighbors who all died from loss of blood. It's not recorded what happened after that, but in the second case, Arnold Powell, everyone's a hello. Arnold Powell, an ex-soldier who became a farmer and was attacked by a vampire, went on with his life, great, no problem, and years later died. But after his death, people began to die in the surrounding area, and it was very widely believed that Powell had returned. Now, what's interesting is that these two incidents are very well documented, and the government definitely got involved and examined the bodies and wrote case reports and published books throughout Europe. The hysteria, which is commonly referred to as the 18th century vampire controversy, went on for a whole generation. In rural areas, especially, there were epidemics of so called vampire attacks, um, with locals digging up bodies and, in some cases, staking them. And many scholars tried to make a point of telling everyone that vampires did not exist and so on and so forth. They attributed reports to premature burial or rabies, etc., etc. And in fact, a whole treatise was put together by a number of people, including the very well respected French theologian and scholar Dom Augustin Calmet, with a whole treatise on vampires. And he amassed reports of all sorts and demonologies. And by the end of all of his collection, got to the point where he claimed that they did exist. Indeed, he wasn't alone in this, it seems, because Voltaire also said that vampires are supposed to exist, and it was noted by Voltaire that the corpses grew fat and rosy and enjoyed an excellent appetite. And it was found that in Poland, Hungary, Silesia, Moravia, Austria, and Lorraine, that the dead made of this good cheer. So, what can we say about that? Lucia, hi. Absolutely a very worrying thought if you think about it. Haha. So the controversy carried on until the Empress Maria Therese of Austria sent her personal physician, one Gerhard von Swieten. Gerhard, there you go, Scarpi, your namesake. He was sent to investigate the claims of vampiric entities and concluded that they did not exist, and therefore the Empress passed laws prohibiting the opening of graves and the desecration of bodies, sounding the end of the so-called epidemics. However, this did not stop the belief. Now, where else can we go? We have done the Romanian, we've done the Indian and Jewish. Now let us take a little jump to Albania, also Eastern Europe. And in Albanian mythology, you have the Striga and the Dampir, much like in Romania. The Striga is a living vampire, a vampiric witch, which sucks the blood of infants at night while they sleep and turns into a kind of flying insect, usually a moth fly or bee, to get around. Only the Striga can cure those who are drained, and is usually depicted as a hateful woman, quite disfigured. There were cases of male Strigas, but not too many. But absolutely fits to both the Romanian and the Jewish, with Lilith, with their particular hatred of infants. Apparently, there are various things that you can do to stop them, though, which is always good. A cross made of pig bone could be placed at the entrance of a church on Easter Sunday, making sure that anybody inside would not be able to leave the church. Now, this is an interesting one because most vampiric traditions say that vampires cannot get on holy ground. However, at the time, it was a known sort of fact that you absolutely had to go to church on the relevant days, and if you didn't, you would be considered evil and burnt at the stake. So everybody went. So even vampires in disguise would have to go to church, and apparently could, but you could catch them in the church, and then knowing that, you could then kill them. It's also recorded that generally after draining the blood, the striga would go and regurgitate it, which is maybe not as weird as it sounds, since it is the life force that they want rather than the physical blood itself. And if you could find this blood and take a silver coin and soak it in that and wrap it in a cloth, it will become an amulet offering permanent protection from any striga. Always a good thing there. Now, the Dampir, as we have discovered, is a half vampire. So an ordinary person who mates with a striga or strigoi would then become pregnant, or if it was a man, she would become pregnant, and the child would become a vampire or a half vampire, which can either become evil and hence a vampire, or become good and become a vampire hunter. Rory, how's it? Good of you to join us. So, we have that. Now, moving on from Albania, we go to Greece. Now, Greece is very interesting because they go back very, very, very far. And modern Greece has as many strange things as ancient Greece. We had a small look at ancient Greece, but in modern Greece, we have the Vrykolakas, which basically is more of a werewolf, and Broukolakas and Katachanades. Please excuse me if I butcher my Greek is pretty much Koine, not much else. But very much around the 18th and 19th centuries were considered to be going around, and in fact, there were actual laws put in place to prevent and combat vampirism. The deceased were exhumed after 3 years, and the remains were treated with wine and holy scripture to make sure that the corpse was safe from being brought back. However, if it was found after 3 years that it was not decayed, it was therefore known to be a vrykolakas and dealt with. But how did the vampirism occur? Alrighty, let's have a look. Vampirism could occur through varying means. Excommunicated people could rise as a vampire. If you desecrated a religious day, which of course would be considered a grave sin, committing a great crime such as murder, of course a grave sin, or oddly enough, dying alone, having a cat jump across one's grave, eating meat from a sheep killed by a wolf, or through being cursed. So absolutely. And now that I've butchered all the Greek words, we've got a Greek fellow who has just joined us. I'm not even going to try and pronounce your whole name, Chara, but welcome, 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 Kalimera. So yeah, there's different ways to become a vrikolakas, but to get rid of these things, crosses naturally. Greece at the time was very Christian, and a kind of bread which is blessed was used, antidoron. That would help stopping them getting at you, but to prevent them from being rising or being raised. Uh, Here again, you've got the piercing thing. Pierce the heart with iron nails, or of course, burn the bodies and scatter the ashes. Now, unfortunately, at the time, the church opposed cremation, which had something to do with the idea of chrismation in baptism. So generally, cremation wasn't permitted unless it was a very serious case, in which case then they would go ahead and do that. But we had to be pretty sure that they were coming back. So certainly lots of stuff in Greece. Now, on to one which I particularly like. Now, I'm sure many of you are fans, of course, of the Elder Scrolls, and one of our absolute favorite games ever is the Elder Scrolls Skyrim. And you will be interested to know that many of the things in the Elder Scrolls are based on genuine folklore. And in Iceland, you have the Draga, um, or the Dragar, it's plural, which usually gets translated as ghost. But this is not actually accurate because in this case, the Icelandic undead are not spiritual so much as corporeal. They are more like zombies. And if you've played Skyrim, you know that this is absolutely the case. So Ulfhedor Dagsdotter and Arman Jacobsen have argued that the Icelandic Draga more in common with the European vampire than it does with ghosts. According to Arman, medieval Icelandic undead can be put into two categories: the Varsmen, or guardians, which are undead that stay in a place, usually their burial mound or home, to protect it and their treasures from thieves and trespassers, right alongside Skyrim there. And these Dragir are depicted as being driven by greed and unwillingness to part with their worldly belongings, and very similar in temperament to dragons, something else that fits very, very well with the Skyrim version. The second category are Tilbaradragr, a Tilbury being a kind of undead, and here you see links to the Jewish and Christian, or Abrahamic, shall we say, origin stories of human life. Possibly this is what inspired the connection, because what happens is that a human rib is given life by feeding it the blood of a witch, and it is then sent out to steal milk and money. These parasitic ghosts roam the earth and harass the living and try to drive them mad or kill them, often by dragging them back to their graves and turning these victims into more draugr. This comparison of the draugr to vampires is not entirely new, as it's been made a number of times from others sagas that have been found, such as the Draugr Glamr in the Grettir's saga. So, is it exactly a vampire? Well, yes, it is, because absolutely blood is involved, and they are indeed not nice at all. And if you've played Skyrim, they're one of the first enemies you have to deal with. So, absolutely there. Now, let us jump over the water to Ireland and Scotland. And again, as is consistent with all of our vampires so far, they are malign and evil. And of course, we have to begin with the Scottish Balvansea from the Scottish Highlands and the Leananchi from the Isle of Man. And these are both spirits with very much vampire tendencies, though they are, of course, she and therefore seen more as fairies in the older view of what a fairy is, not the little Tinkerbell Twinky Winky ones, but the Twisted Danaan variety. And of course, this is very much I'm going to call it an argument, because what the Gaelic type call a fairy is much broader than what most people think fairies are. So we have the legends of Drochfoil, and indeed Dundrochfoile, the castle, uh, Drochfoil meaning evil blood, and of course that is the castle that guards McGillicuddy's Reeks Mountain of County Kerry. We have the legend of Abartach, an evil tyrant who repeatedly escapes his grave to spread terror and to drink the blood of his subjects, who is said to be, and here again we have a link to vampires, one of the Neam Marais, or undead, and can only be killed with a sword of yew wood and being buried upside down. Again, in much of the, I'm going to call it the British Isles. You can hate me if you don't like that description, but the use of specific woods. Yew wood is very much considered all over the British Isles and in multiple cultures to have power against evil. So make note of that one. In the legend of Gankana, it's a seductive male fairy who is said to entrance, says your charms again, and kill young women. He has no shadow, something which often comes up about vampires, and cannot enter a home unless invited inside, also something the modern vampires have an issue with, and is repelled by the sign of the cross. Again, holiness against the evil that they represent. So we've gone through quite a few of these interesting different vampires. Clearly, there's a lot to be said about all of these things, but we're seeing strong links and commonalities, absolutely. So, if you've just joined us, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you're enjoying our chats and all the rest of it. And like, subscribe. If you want to, send me a link and join in with the chat. Become part of our little group. You would be most welcome. So absolutely, be a part of this and add your views. Know that we are not saying anything is absolutely right or absolutely wrong at the moment. We are just looking at what people over the centuries and lands actually say. Now, the next version I find to be very, very interesting because in the Irish traditions, the very old traditions of the fairy, one of the nastiest are in fact the little Tinkerbell type fairies, which live in flowers and are ever so cute and move in swarms of beauteous cuteness, but which absolutely drink blood and are considered to be truly terrifying as much as they are beautiful. So just because it's nice doesn't make it good. And I'm put in mind of the Lord of the Rings when um, the first meeting with Strider in the Dancing Pony, where it is pointed out that he would more likely be um, evil if he looked fairer and felt fouler. To which Strider responds, whereas I look foul and feel fair. But there's an absolute truth to that. I think that many nasty things, until they reveal their true self, do look fairer but feel fouler. So, yeah, those tinkly winkly little fairies are absolutely terrifying and quite vampiric, though they are living, of course. Um, but they have an echo in the Turkic and Slavic traditions. So the most common causes of vampirism there is if a magician or immoral person dies, they become a vampire. If you suffer an unnatural or untimely death, especially suicide, excommunication, improper burial, or an animal jumping or a bird flying over the corpse or the grave, um, and if you are born with any kind of extra body part or a call, um, so that right there can cause vampirism. If you talk to yourself, and I think we're all guilty of that, so watch out, lads, you're gonna turn into a vampire. You are at risk. But Slavic vampires can appear as butterflies. And this links to a belief that butterflies symbolize a departing soul. Um, they do have both living and dead vampires, and some of the living ones are considered to have two souls, and being kind of which capable of leaving its body and engaging in harmful and vampiric activity while their body sleeps. So, absolutely, we've got some weird ones in there. Um, Two of the earliest historical recordings of vampire activity we can find from around the 14th century, um, where a shepherd died and was buried, and he did not stay in the grave. Each evening he walked around, spoke to people as if he was alive, and terrifying them. And soon he started killing. And if he stopped by somebody's house and called their name, the person would then die within 8 days. So several villagers got together and they exhumated him and burnt his body. And while they while they were doing this and he was screaming, somebody couldn't take it and stabbed him with a stick, and fresh blood came out of the wound, even though he had been dead for some time. However, once he was completely burned, all of the evil events stopped. Around the same time, there was a woman from Levin who again was buried and came back, killed several people, and danced on them. Once she was exhumed and a stake put through her, blood poured out as if she was still alive. She also ate her clothes, and once the clothes were pulled from her mouth, they were bloody as if she had regurgitated blood on them fresh. So they decided that this was it. They didn't need that. Hey, Jason. So they decided to burn her. But unfortunately, the wood not catch fire right up until the point where they used pieces of the church roof to start it. So a holy blessed item was needed to even get the fire going. And of course, once she was burnt, the evil stopped. Now, some so-called vampire stories or undead stories around the areas do not drink blood, and therefore I don't think they count as vampires at all. And many of them, while they are said to be undead, they seem to connect to other versions of mythology, can we say? Yes, we can. But some of these stories about the ones that do drink blood and are vampires get really detailed, going into the stages of development and how one becomes a vampire. So the first 40 days are decisive, and it starts out only as a kind of invisible ghost, and it needs to eat and eat and eat until it can finally build up a human-like body nearly identical to the person that they were in life. After this time, it can begin its new life as a human, and this new simulacra that it has built is just like the one it was before it died, but also it was noted that it is sexually active and can have children. And these children can become a dhampir. They can either become a vampire or become someone who can see if somebody is a vampire. Most people can't. Junior Hazard, welcome, welcome, and Mini Loaf. So, absolutely, we can see that vampires are tricky and are able to pass unknown. And the ability to actually see them is a skill as well. We see that it's definitely connected with sin or ill doing and so forth. They turn up and drink blood, and as the stories went on, you can only kill by piercing the heart in some way, usually a wooden stake, and very often, hey Melissa, very often a specific wood such as yew or elm. Now, there are places where wood is not sufficient, and iron is used to pierce the heart of the vampire. And this links up to many of the stories of the fairy in the Gaelic traditions, where fairies can't stand iron. Iron is considered to be strong against evil for some reason, something we'll have to go into at some stage as well. But again, the blood drinking right there. And in fact, in places like Croatia and Slovenia and the Czech Republic and Slovakia, vampires are called Pijavika, which again, just like in the Jewish version, translates to leech. And again, evil and sinful life as a human, and then becomes a killer after death. Incest is almost certainly to bring the creature back as a vampire. And here is the first time that we encounter the use of garlic to hold off vampires, the use of fire to destroy them while they're awake, and the use of exorcism if you find it during the day and it's asleep. So, different places had different things. Twins turn up in many situations where they can see if someone's a vampire. If you can get twins to yoke an twin oxen to plow a furrow, around a village, it would stop them from coming in. If you can get hawthorn pegs and nail them into the grave in the position of the wrists, ankles, head, and heart of where the person would be lying. And here's one which I think I wouldn't want to have to try. If you can run backwards uphill with a lit candle and a turtle, it will ward off a stalking vampire. I'm sure we all carry turtles around with us. Interesting again, red wool is a good way to stop a vampire. You surround the grave and set it on fire. And of course, holding of evil spirits in the Hindu tradition is with a red thread. So maybe red is an important color here. And again, salt can hold off vampires in most places, though in some it attracts them, so hard to say. But salt and evil definitely hold a whole lot of issues. Now, another officially recorded story of a vampire is one from Croatia, where a chappie died and came back, apparently, and began drinking blood from the people and sexually harassing his widow. And here the village head ordered a stake to be driven through his heart. But this didn't work for whatever reason. We don't know why. But he was subsequently beheaded, and that did work. Among the Rom, you have the Mulo, which are literally one who is dead who has come back. They drink human blood, especially relatives, apparently. And usually they go after people who did not properly observe the burial rituals or who kept things that were supposed to be destroyed that belonged to the deceased. Apparently, these vampires, especially female ones, could return, lead a normal life, and even marry, but would exhaust their husband with their sexual appetite. And they could then also father children, which could become dhampirs. So, absolutely. Again, anybody who had appendages missing or was born with extras or less than, who died alone, or who was just plain ugly, could very much become a vampire. If the corpse swelled or turned black, sounds exactly like the bubonic plague, of course, which may have had some effect there, then you could be a vampire. Interestingly, dogs, cats, plants, and even agricultural tools could become vampires. And if you kept a pumpkin in the house for too long, it would become a vampire and either drain you or start showing blood, which is very interesting because pumpkins are very much connected to the Halloween stories, and lots of people, especially in America, put them in their houses and carve them. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe you're inviting in the vampire. Better be careful there, America. Just checking. Certain people have said that vampires are generally invisible, but those with a special sight could see them, and that would make them very important, especially twins. Um, so, yeah, you want to be careful of those. So, now, what do you all think so far? Do you have any comments for me? Where are you from? Are you from any of the places that we have spoken of thus far? Um, have you got any local stories of vampires? Can you tell us anything? I don't know. It's an interesting question. We are going to keep going though because we're going to get to where I live, and yes, here in Africa we have vampires too. So we are going to get to those eventually, but before we overload everybody with too many things, just to reiterate, we can say absolutely your vampires have to drink blood to be vampires. They have to be evil to be vampires. Um, and generally were nasty people in life. And yeah, for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, were human beings originally. Um, there are one or two that weren't. I'm sure pumpkins were never human beings, but there you go. We absolutely do have a lot of different stories, and many of these stories are very, very old. So we've been worried about the existence of vampires for a very long time. Now, looking through the modern news on social media, I've noted there has been a number of stories that have come to light where people have been asking if the Catholic Church has been hiding the legends from us because vampires are in fact real and might even be hidden in specialized prisons beneath the Vatican. Well, it's an interesting thing because there have been times in history when the church has, in fact, done a very great deal to stop vampires, which one would assume would only be done if vampires were real. We know that in England, especially, and in many of the places around the British Isles, churches often have in their attached graveyards, because generally graveyards are attached to the church in the way they were built in the old days there. Um, elm and yew would be, or ash and yew would be planted in the graveyard to ward off evil and to protect those buried there on holy ground from malevolence or rising again or witches coming to steal away the corpses. So, absolutely, things have been done to protect against such creatures, almost as if they are in fact real. Um, hmm, not too sure there, but maybe it is true. We know that in several other countries around, there have been a number of things done to combat vampires. So, over the centuries, people have absolutely believed. Uh, and apparently have stories of where people have actually become vampires. Now, for those of you who didn't know, there are groups who claim to be vampires, some of whom do drink blood, who exist especially in America, but around the world. And there is, in fact, a special organization in South Africa called the South African Vampire Association, where people who are vampires and who wish to learn more about vampirism can join, apparently. Um, certainly in America, um, there are politically recognized groups who are apparently vampires. So I don't know. There are modern people who say they are. I have not personally met any of them, so I couldn't tell you straight off whether or not they really, really were vampires. They didn't try to bite me. that I've seen. So maybe I've just been lucky. I would like to think that I've never been in the presence of a vampire, but who knows? Maybe they were out and about and they might do terrible things to me. But yes, in the modern age, we have vampires, and you can, in fact, go and learn how to be a vampire, learn about the different kinds of vampires. Um, as I have mentioned previously, you get not only sanguine vampires, doesn't that sound good? I.e., physical blood drinking vampires, you also get psychic vampires who simply drain your health, energy, life force, or whatever it is as well. Uh, and of course, you get tantric vampires who drain your life force through sex. Um, hey, what a way to go! I don't know. But certainly in the modern age, we do have vampires, real ones. So who knows? But we will leave our vampires there for the moment, and we will go on in the next live and see what other kinds we can find before we try and make any modern assumptions about vampires in our current day. But while you're all here, remember to like, subscribe, join in, send in your comments. We absolutely do want to interact. Remember that I have my shorts up as well that you can go and comment on, and you can send me a message and let me know what you think. And if I am able to, I will try to include such comments uh, into the videos and maybe even try and answer them. So let me know what you think. But from there on, have an absolutely amazing, amazing day. Enjoy. Thanks to all of you who have joined in. Thanks most especially to good old Scarpy. Go and like and follow his like and follow his. Oh, goodness gracious me! It's being annoying today. Why is it being annoying? Why are you being annoying? Okay, it's crashing on me, so we are going to have to end our live. For some reason, there we go. Finally, it's responding. Much better. Hey there to Laverne Mars and Mr. Morris. Hi and hi. But yeah, we're going to start wrapping this up. I think the video is whining at me because we have been on for a while. So we're going to close it up. Again, thank you so much to everybody who has joined. So do hope you're enjoying the whole of our live. Have a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic day. Try to keep warm. It is freezing at the moment. Winter is going to be hitting hard, and we're going to suffer. And as I was saying before, my live started getting silly. Make sure you go and see old Scarpy on his Scarp Start Radio and like and follow him as well. He does amazing music and is a lot more upbeat than our Strange Bones chat, which tends to the dark. Hey, Lindy, welcome, welcome, welcome. But yeah, have a fantastic day, you all, and send me in those comments. And if anybody wants to join me for a live, let me know when you are able to, and we will make a plan so that we can have a good old chat as well. And with that, have a great one.